Today on the Blair Technique podcast, I'm really excited to have Dr. Christine Zapata, all the way from Emerald City. She's over in Seattle, Washington there. I'm really pumped to have Dr. Zapata. She brings, I think, a really unique set of skills within the Blair community. And so we're really excited to extract some of her wisdom and some value that she offers there. But first, Dr. Zapata, before we dive in, love for you to introduce yourself to the Blair community. Give us your background, how you got interested in Blair. We were talking just before we started out, how that all transpired. So love for you to share that, and then we'll dive right in.
Sure. First, I just want to thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be featured in this podcast. To give people a little background on myself, I'm Dr. Christine Zapata. I'm the owner and clinic director at Emerald City Spinal Care in Seattle, Washington. And I got a year before graduating from Life Chiropractic College West and upper cervical technique, and just sitting in the back of class thinking, this really makes a lot of sense. If you can stabilize the upper neck and it can support the weight of the head, then everything below will become stable as well. And I started working in an upper cervical office, a different technique than Blair. Straight out of school, worked as an associate doctor in San Francisco. And I was there for about a year and a half. And it just wasn't a good fit for me. I just don't think that my vision for what I wanted out of an associateship, I think that was different than what the lead doctors were looking for. And so I left, and I really was at a point where I had no idea what I was going to do. And one of my roommates in chiropractic school was Jake Hollowell, who practices in Brazil. And he was switching, I think, from Gonstead to Blair. And he was like, Christine, you already have this upper cervical background. You should really think about switching to the Blair technique. And so I hung out in the back of Dr. Forrest's office. He has a shed where he keeps a lot of old files and films. And so I just ended up hanging out in this dark, tiny little shed, analyzing x-rays and trying to learn as much as I could about the Blair technique. And I remember after a couple months of doing that, I asked Dr. Forrest if there were other docs who were looking for associates, and got introduced to Chris Wolf, who practices here in Seattle. And at the time I wasn't married. I don't have any kids. So I figured, I'm born and raised in California. I figured I'd move up to Seattle, take on this opportunity with Dr. Wolf, learn as much as I could, not only about the technique, but the business side of things as well, because that was something that was really lacking in my first opportunity that I really, really wanted. And so I moved to Seattle. I told Dr. Wolf that I only wanted to be here for a year. Being from California, I think everyone in California thinks that Seattle is really gray and rainy and kind of depressing. So I guaranteed a year and said that I would take everything that I learned and I'd move back to San Francisco. And it was 2009. When I moved here to Seattle, and I have never left. I actually really like it here, and just planted some roots down here. So
That's
that's how I got into Blair.
Talking to folks about their journey, there's so many different paths to what we're doing, and everyone's kind of got this, idea, and then they start on the path, and things evolve and transpire that lead you in one direction or another. So it's important to be open to those, diversions in the road. So you've got. Mm-hmm. Well, over 10 years experience plus in that community. So I'm really interested in this idea of what is the first 10 years of practice like, and how do you evolve as a person, as a clinician, as a communicator, as a business person. So if we were to break that up into the 0 to 5 and then 5 to 10 years, we're really interested if you had any things to comment on what changed for you as it relates to maybe your mindset, your vision, habits that you formed, the systems within the office, and walk us through that evolution to kind of give folks an idea of, where they might be on that path and how to keep moving forward.
Sure. I think one of the most important things, regardless of where you are in that 0 to 10 years, you have to have a super clear vision on what it is that you want, because you'll never know when you get there, because you have no idea where the end goal is. So vision is huge. I knew early on that I wanted to own my own clinic. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. I came out of school with over $250,000 in student loans. And so I really thought that trying to find an opportunity where I could learn technique and business, and not just the business of chiropractic, but really how do I process new patients? How do I actually attract patients into my practice? So I would say the first couple years in practice, once I had that really crystal clear vision in what I wanted, it was really trying to absorb as much as I could when it came to building a practice, managing a high volume practice, and just really trying to figure out, how do I be a chiropractor outside of the student clinic? Because what you learn in student clinic is very different than what it actually is like when you're in private practice. And I think one of the things that I did early on was look to see what other very successful, not just chiropractors, but people in any industry, what are the common traits that they have? And so many of them have different routines and mindset practices that really get them fired up and energized to do the things that they have to do. Because for anybody who is new in practice, or even seasoned docs, if you can think back to what it was like in the beginning, it was a lot of work. There were a lot of sacrifices that I had to make. My husband will tell you, when we first met, I would say for the first probably 5 or 6 years that we were together, I would oftentimes skip out on camping trips or happy hours with friends, or different events, because I knew what I wanted to do in my practice and where I wanted to go. And if I would look at my numbers for the following week and see that I was just a couple new patients shy of my goal, then instead of going out to have fun, I would make those sacrifices, and I would go and work so that I could hit my goals. I think that that's something that a lot of new docs may not necessarily realize. You have to put in a lot of sweat equity, and you have to be okay with delayed gratification. That's something that I tell new docs all the time. You have to understand this concept of delayed gratification, where instead of having that short-term goal or that short-term fun, you may have to sacrifice that so that later on down the road, you can have the things that you want. And then go out into the community to try to get new patients. And so I would say the first 3 to 5 years, you really know where you're going. Be okay with having to put in a lot of sweat equity and having to delay delay gratification.
Yeah, it's going to make
And
that
then
so much more enjoyable later, knowing that you've earned it, right? And that you've really not come by it easily. There's got to be a sense of real pride and satisfaction in the fact that, like, you did do that work, you did put in the sweat equity, you've earned the ability to start to enjoy the fruits of your labor a little bit more. And that's got to feel so much better than the short-term gratification too.
Yeah. And you had asked, like, what does it look like year 5 to 10? Again, thinking about other successful people and the things that they do, they surround themselves with people who are doing the things that they want, or they've done what they're looking to do. I really think that surrounding yourself with the right people and talking to them and finding out, what are the things that you had to do to get to where you are right now? Because I'm trying to get there. I'm not trying to emulate exactly where you are right now. I really want to try to emulate the trajectory, because I know that every overnight success took many, many years to get there. And so, trying to surround myself with mentors and coaches and just other people in other industries who are super successful, and just finding out, what did you do to get here? And a lot of them have coaches, mentors. Many of them wake up really early, get a lot of stuff done, make sure that they're eating right, they get enough rest, that they're getting their minds right, and they're focusing on the things that will just help them get to where they want to go. Being super grateful about the things that they have, and just having the right mindset So in talking to a lot of these super successful people, it was like, all right, how do I incorporate some of this into my own life? Because I know where I want to go. And so I think that that's something that as you get further along in practice, because you get to a point where you're in the first 5 years of practice and you've put your head down and you've been working really, really hard. And then, like you said, you get to a point where you get to actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. At that point, you can either stay where you're at or you can try to get to the next level. And in order to get there, if you've been in practice for more than 5 years, you may have to do change your so that you can try to level up. Because at least for me, I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. I am always trying to just get to another level, do more things, reach more people. And I feel like the quickest shortcut is to just surround yourself with others who can help you.
And I think that's in line with our philosophy of health that we try to communicate to patients too, which is if you create the conditions for health in the body, it's going to respond in turn in a healthy way. And while there are these quick fixes and distractions and all this stuff out there when it comes to health and guaranteed results if you do this shake or whatever it is, we talk about that from a health point of view, but in business practice, it seems like we adopt that same sort of syndrome sometimes, which is like, what new modality is going to bring me new patients? What's this, what's that? But it's those tried and true principles, the things that have consistently worked across a wide variety of industries that are serving people. I think it's really wise to be looking at those things, because if you become the person that can do those things, you're going to get that result. So that's really powerful and great advice for anyone at any level, because like you said, there's always someone a level above and there's always more that can be done. And so if you have that vision or you've changed or crafted your vision, then that just restarts the process of evolution, which is, I think, the most exciting part of it. It's not like you're just done at some point. You've just reached the point where you've made it. So there's always room for improvement, which is, I think, powerful.
Yeah.
You mentioned associateships in the beginning, and I know it's one thing that, thinking back to school and sort of the end part of your curriculum, and you're trying to evaluate your career options and where do I go, what do I do, what's next. It seemed like a lot of folks just assume that I'll just get an associate position. Let me just go work for somebody, try to figure out what I'm into, how this all works, and probably goes into with a similar type of perspective you did, which is this experience is going to be XYZ. And then the field doc that's hiring them in might be on a totally different page as it relates to where that role in the practice for that doc fits. So I'd like to talk about associateships quickly. What it's like to be one, what it's like to train one, and some of the experiences that you've had on either side of that, how we can sort of eliminate the communication errors between lead docs and associates so that it can be a most successful endeavor for both.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of people about this. As an associate for myself, again, I think it really all comes down to your vision, both for the associate and the lead doc. Associates, a lot of times they're looking to learn as much as they can because they don't have that experience. And for a lot of new docs, they need the systems and processes that will help them be successful at building a practice and maintaining a healthy practice. And I think it's really important for, like I said earlier, for these associates to have that clear vision in what it is that they're trying to gain from an associateship. And when it comes to a lead doc, I think it's really important that they get really crystal clear and honest with themselves why they want to bring on an associate. I'll oftentimes talk to lead docs and they say, I'm super tired. I've been doing this for 15, 20 years. I want to bring on an associate doc so they can start seeing all the people. And then I can take a step out and maybe I can finally go on vacation with my family. Instead of me being the one to see patients, I'll just have the associate do it. And I've heard a lot of situations where the associate comes on thinking that they're going to learn all this stuff. And then the doc just ends up kind of being absent and they're not around, but the associate is really faced with the responsibility of having to keep that clinic going when
Hmm.
they don't know the systems, they don't know the processes. I think it's really important that a lead doc, if they're looking to bring on associates, you have to have all of your systems and processes written down and in a place where it's easily found. And it also needs to be something that they're trained on all the time. One thing that we do in our office that I continued after leaving Dr. Wolf's office is weekly trainings. Weekly trainings are super important. We'll train on a bunch of different things. We'll train on different systems and processes in the office. We'll train on how to handle objections when a patient either doesn't want to sign up for care, or perhaps they're halfway through a care plan and they don't understand why, even though they're feeling better, they still have 12 more visits to go through on their initial care plan. How do you handle those objections, or how do you handle those conversations with people? Without training like that, um, it, if you don't know what to do as an associate, you're just going to make it up.
Hmm.
And oftentimes it's not what the lead doc wants you to do, but it again, when associates are faced with having to figure out what to do when they don't know it, they're just going to make it up. And so I think it's really important that there's training that is involved with bringing on an associate doctor. I also think that it's really important to have very clearly defined roles.
Hmm.
If it's an associate doctor that is going to cover the practice when the lead doc is out, they need to know what happens when certain things arise. Is it something where they have the autonomy to make decisions on the fly, or is it something that needs to get ran through the lead doc first? I think that that's really important. And when it comes to having an associate in the office, I think, again, just being really clear, do you want to bring them on because you genuinely want to train and develop associate doctors, whether they stay with you or go
Hmm.
on to do other things? Because if that's the case, then I think it's going to be a win-win for everybody. If that's not clearly defined, then it's definitely a situation that can be more negative for one than the other.
Yeah, and if you think about the patient's experience, because if you're on a mission to help folks that are suffering, you want to maximize the patient experience within a healthcare setting because they're horrible everywhere else, right? So we want to be the doctor that everyone loves to go to. So if you bring someone in and you're lacking those systems and all of a sudden the experience changes, you're going to lose folks that have been fans, that have been consistently under care, and then that's not good for them. And it's not good for your brand. It's not good for your image within the community. And so it all comes back full circle to that vision, which is, why are we doing what we're doing here? What's the goal? Expectations and communication with this type of thing, I think, are super important, as in any relationship. So super good advice there. And if you were to maybe characterize, the lead doc versus the associate type, right? The type of person that might thrive more in one role than the other. Is there anything that you've noticed or any observations you've made about, you might be a better fit in this role if you're this type of person?
Yeah, I think for associates, it's super important that they're coachable, because there's no point in you working for someone in a role where you could be learning a ton of valuable information. I really think that associateships give you, they give you so much information that you don't get in school. And so I think it has to be for someone who is coachable, can take constructive criticism, is open to learning new innovative strategies that may not necessarily be intuitive to them. I think that one of the signs that you have a really good mentor or coach is if they're sharing with you things that seem counterintuitive. It's supposed to be counterintuitive, because if it was intuitive, then you would already be doing it.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I think that for someone who is looking to work as an associate, it really needs to be somebody who's willing and open to learning things that may not necessarily make sense to them at the time. And then as far as a lead doc, I really think that someone who maybe is a little more driven, is maybe a little bit more type A, and someone who can can really sometimes work independently,
Mm,
because sometimes you have to be able to make tough decisions on the fly, and not everybody can do that. Some people, when they're faced with really challenging situations, they kind of freeze. um, I don't necessarily think that a lead doc um, would be successful if they can't be decisive.
yeah.
um, so so yeah. Oh, another thing I think for associates is, one thing that I've noticed in seeing successful associates work alongside me when I was an associate, or even associate docs who have come through my office, the ones who have some sort of clinic ownership,
Mm,
where they kind of feel like, okay, this is a part of me, even though they may not. Like, I remember as an associate doc, I was like, I don't own this clinic, but this is my practice
my
in this
practice, yes.
space. So I'm going to do what I can to make sure that this thrives. So I had some ownership, took some ownership in what I did, and the things that I try to put out into the community. I think that that helps with associates as well.
Have you always been that kind of person that when you do something or tackle something, you just dive in and you really want to be excellent in it? Or is that something that you've had to kind of develop over time?
I think that that is just in my nature. I'm a perfectionist at heart. And so I'm always trying to do things better. If I'm not competing with somebody else, I'm definitely competing with myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think that that's probably something that a lead doc should have.
Yeah. And then you've obviously worked to develop it, right?
Yeah.
It's not just something that happens automatically. That skill has to be, massaged and turned
Hmm.
into something workable. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
okay, good. If you had any advice for students or young docs that might be listening and they're interested in what you're saying and they're trying to navigate that decision-making process, what's the best way to communicate with a lead doc and to learn about, those opportunities? I mean, where do they start the process of making career decisions?
I think it's important for, again, students or new docs to figure out what their vision is, and then try to find another doc who is doing the same thing that you're trying to do. Maybe you find a clinic where the doc is servicing the same type of people you want to work with. If you want to work with pediatrics and pregnant women, then find another successful doc who is serving those types of people, and then talk to them and find out if they're in a place where they can bring on an associate to train and develop them, or if they can't go into the office, find out if they'd be willing to mentor and coach them, because then they can share all of the different challenges and things that they've had to overcome to get to where they are.
And sometimes learning what you don't want to do is just as valuable. So you go through those experiences and you have an idea about what you think something's going to be like, and then when you see it in the real world, you're like, that is not what I'm into. So I think that's not a failure. That's definitely a step in the right direction. And sometimes, depending on your personality, that'll help sort of narrow the focus to a
Mm-hmm.
point where you can create a little bit more clarity in your vision. So that's definitely been my experience. And that's one thing I love about chiropractic. There's so many different avenues to explore
Mm-hmm.
that it really can be, even if you have a technique system, like we've got a solid, sound, scientific technique system. I was just talking with a patient yesterday who's transferred care from another doc. It's Each practice has its own feel, has its own culture, has its own demographic. I mean, everybody has the way they express that technique a little bit differently. So even within something that you really like within the art of chiropractic, there's going to be countless ways, to create that for yourself. So all good advice. And if you're an associate thinking about transitioning out into a lead doc role, I think it's also important to remember that all the work that you don't want to have to do as an associate, you're going to have to do if you start a practice, and then a
Mm-hmm.
bunch more that you don't know about yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking about that my first, I don't know, maybe year in practice, and just looking at this list of skills that I had to like learn on the fly. I was like, you know what? I understand now, why there's this disconnect, because I had no clue or context for any of this stuff that I've been working on most of the time. And now looking back, if you were just an associate, I could understand that you don't see what goes into all the behind the scenes sweat equity, like you called it, just to give you that opportunity to come in and serve and to be trained.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see where, there would be some animosity if the appreciation, wasn't there, or, there's a million ways that could become dicey. But
Yeah.
Speaking of communication, I know that you mentioned different training scenarios like handling objections, and we kind of touched on how important it is to communicate within the team of the office.
Mhm.
But what are some common communication mistakes that you see folks make, either that you made early in practice, things that you trained on with Dr. Wolf, or that you're now coaching folks on?
Yeah, one of the things that I see happen all the time with new docs, and I was totally guilty of this when I first got out of school and started practicing. I think the biggest mistake that new docs make is you talk too much,
100%.
and
Yep.
uh, and you sometimes, well, all the time, use technical terms and all of this clinical jargon that the average person has no idea about. And I know for me, when I was a new doc, I was trying to tell everybody about vertebral subluxation complex and innate intelligence. And the average person is like, what?
Yeah.
Ver what? I don't know what you're saying. And one thing that I've learned from a lot of the sales trainings that I do, I'm so fascinated with sales. Sales is really just goal-oriented communication.
Hmm.
I think I know for myself, and this can oftentimes be the case for people that I talk to who are new in practice, they don't want to sell anything because they're trained as a chiropractor and sales is really sleazy. But I really think that there's a way that you can sell or communicate with people in a way where you're coming from a place of integrity. And I've learned that clarity creates confidence, and
Hmm.
and confusion creates insecurity.
Hmm.
And if a prospect is really confused, they're never going to buy. So that patient who's really confused is never going to sign up for care. An example of this is when I was early in practice, I would bring in a lot of new patients into the office, and I would try to explain to them what they have going on using these very clinical terms. And, I would tell people, with what you've got going on, you describe neck pain, you've got numbness and tingling down your arm. So you probably have a subluxation in your neck that's causing the cervical radiculopathy down your arm. And it's probably involving C4 and C5. And they're like, what are you talking about? And so I would try to sell them on care plans. Like, I think you're going to need 24 visits over the course of 6 months. And they just look at me and they're like, okay, this is a lot of good information. I'm going to take this home and think about it. Let me go
Yeah.
talk to my spouse, or I'm going to go talk to my medical doctor and see what they say. And maybe if this is something that they think that I should do, then I'll call you.
Yeah.
I think that that's their very graceful way of bowing out of the conversation. I'm so confused right now. I don't
Yeah.
know what to do.
Yeah.
And so associates that come on, they talk a lot, and I think that's where it's super important that you be really crystal clear in what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, and you help them understand by using terms that they understand and they can comprehend, and just be really transparent with people. I think that that's really important.
Yeah. I know for myself, I've had to learn that too. And I think when I think back, on those first interactions like you're talking about, I think I might have been trying to convince myself as much as them that I'm worth
Mhm,
it, right? And so
mhm,
you're
yeah,
trying to portray this image of a competent doctor,
mhm,
um, and I think they can smell that a mile
yeah,
away.
yep,
Number one, and number two, it's really not in their best interest for you to try to flex your terminology and
yeah,
show off. And so ultimately, and talking about sales, if you're selling something of value, then it's great. You should sell it, right? If it's going to help them, if it's going to
mhm,
improve their quality of life and experience on earth, you better be
mhm,
good at selling it, because it's going to be the best investment they've made in their health across the board.
yeah.
So it's not a scary thing. It's not a bad thing. It's you creating opportunities for folks. It's being in exchange with folks on a service that you have to offer that they can't get
Mhm.
anywhere else. So
Yeah.
really
And
powerful stuff there.
communication is a skill. And I know that that's a skill that most new docs or chiropractic students, they don't actually learn uh, how to improve their communication skills until they're faced with, I don't have a thriving practice. I need to figure out like what do I need to do to sell a care plan to somebody so that they can actually see the results that I know that I can give them.
I'll tell you what you do. If you have the courage to do this, you film yourself doing a consultation and you watch it back, and you're going to be shocked at how it's not what you think it is. So
Yeah.
getting that immediate feedback. I was solo in practice. I didn't work as an associate. So I had to do that, to
Mhm.
get the data in front of me without the eyes of a mentor to say, what is actually happening on the other side of the table? What are they seeing? And that was cringy, I guess, to say
Yeah.
the least, but it's definitely the kind of thing that helps you identify where there's area for improvement. So that's
Mhm.
that's one drill, if you want to try to see like what you're really doing and what it's really like.
Yeah.
That'd be a great way to test that. And let's be
Yeah.
honest, when you're a student, you're not in reality. You're
No.
totally 100 miles from where anybody in the real world is thinking. And so it's really good to humble yourself during that transition from doc to student and
Yep.
everybody says this, right? Get out and talk to as many people as you can. But it's true. And it's really important because number one, you have to overcome your fear of talking with folks. You have to get that feedback of what's landing and what's not, the errors in your
Mhm.
communication, whether that's Toastmasters or just hitting the streets or screening or whatever it is. Like there's a million ways that you can improve on that skill, but it really is everything when it comes down to that interaction where it can change the course of somebody's life. And it's up to you to have what you said, put in the work to make sure that that transition is as easy as possible for them.
Mhm.
Awesome. Let's talk about how business has changed over the years, because you've gone from being an associate to transitioning to your own practice. You have had associates, you've got associates. What has the
Mhm.
business been like as far as your own development and how you've changed the way that you guys do things over the years?
Yeah, early on, I saw everyone with a spine. It was like, all right, you have a spine, let's take care of you. And a lot of times I was having to convince people why they needed chiropractic and why they needed to work with me.
Mm,
And I just got to a point where I was seeing a lot of people. I was really stressed out. I was kind of on the verge of burnout because it got to a point where at the end of the day, I would be completely drained because I'm having to, um, re-enroll someone who was like, why do I need to keep coming back? Like you told me 24 visits and it's visit 4 and I don't feel any better. And I'd have 8 people in the reception area waiting. And here I am trying to spend 30 minutes trying to tell this person like, stick with it.
yeah.
We're not done yet. That just got to be really stressful. And so I would say over the years, my practice has evolved in a way where now I've just gotten really crystal clear on who my ideal client is, my ideal patient, who do I do my best work with.
Yeah.
And it has really shaped not only my marketing and how I target these people so that I can fill my practice with more of them, but it also influences just how it influences the patient experience in the office so that when they come in they just feel like they're in the right place. Like me and my staff, we love hearing when a patient comes in and they're like, oh my god, I love this place, I love coming here, I really feel like you designed this place for me. Like you have a tea station, like I love tea. You've got a place to tie up my dog so that I can get checked and they're not running around free range in your office. Like we got really clear on who we love to work with. And we really designed, again, not just marketing, but the patient experience in the office so that they feel like they're in the right place. And now practice is so much more fun, so much less stressful. And my practice is full of the people that I absolutely love working with. And while I've had to turn people away, I feel good about it because I know that I'm not meant to serve everyone. I'm just meant to serve and impact the people that I love to do my best work with. And
Yeah.
so those people tend to stay, they pay, and they refer people just like them. So I think that has really been the biggest change in my business over the years.
Yeah, I think there's probably a natural evolution with that, where when you're starting out, you kind of need to go broad so that you can
Mhm.
find out what you do like, who
Yeah.
you are doing your best work with, because you don't know. You've got what do you take, like 100 adjustments to graduate from chiropractic school or something like that? You
Mhm.
have like zero experience, so you really don't know. You just are relying on what other people have told you about. what practice is
Yeah.
like. So go broad, and then over time focus in. And it's really cool when you overhear patients will remark that like they ran into a friend in your reception area. It's like, that's the perfect example of like, those worlds colliding where you're really targeted and spot on with that. And it's, I guess you call that social proof, that reinforces that they've made a good decision to
Yeah.
be under care with you. So that's awesome. And it's so fun, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
that's the cool thing about practice, is being able to, make those changes over time and evolve. And it's a project, it's a never ending project. And within your community, I was just talking with another small business owner recently. Sometimes it's hard to get a gauge of your community, when you're coming into a new place. Like you're not from Seattle, right?
Mhm.
So at first glance, you sort of create this image of the community, and you think you have an understanding of how things work. But once you become embedded and integrated within the community, and you really kind of see what it's like, those things change as well. And I found that to be very rewarding. And I know that you've done a lot of hard work as far as community engagement, especially during the pandemic here, and made a quick shift in your marketing calendar, like we were talking about before we started here. Could you talk through maybe your thought process with that, some of the things that you found to be very successful in terms of positioning yourself as a leader in the community, being consistently out there and visible, and creating engagement in a way that is beneficial for not just your practice but the community at large?
Mhm. When so I guess to give listeners some background, before we started this, I was telling Dr. John that what we like to do in our office is plan our entire marketing calendar several months in advance. So we'll plan our January to December marketing calendar before the previous Thanksgiving. That way, before the holidays hit, we already know come the next year, we've already planned the work. Now, all we have to do in the year is work the plan. So we had all of our marketing lined up. We, prior to the pandemic, did a lot of community outreach. My office is right in the heart of Seattle, and we're surrounded by high-rise luxury apartment buildings, and they're full of people who work in tech. And so a lot of what we did prior to COVID was go into these high-rise apartment buildings and host wellness happy hours for residents so that they could meet different healthcare professionals in the area that they may want to work with. Because a lot of the people that, at least the target market that we work with, they're young professionals in tech that moved to Seattle for work. So
Mm.
it just made sense for us and the people that we were trying to target to go into these places that they lived to introduce them to us and then other healthcare professionals. Seattle was ground zero for COVID, and March, just slowly but surely, events started getting canceled because apartment managers were like, we're just really not sure what the stuff that's going on. We have this wellness happy hour lined up for this Thursday. Let's postpone. And it was like, all right, cool. And then, just every week it was the same story. And by the beginning of April last year, the entire marketing calendar that we had planned just imploded. And so we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to be able to stay in front of people, because we can't do any face-to-face marketing like we had been doing and had been really successful with. And so we pivoted and decided to open up $100 tabs at different businesses. That way, one, we could try to support our local small business community. The things that I was hearing from people was just a lot of, they were just really scared and really anxious about what was happening, because at the time, no one had any idea what was going to happen and how long this was going to happen for. And so I just remember seeing all the doom and gloom on social media, and it was something that, I wanted to try to flip the script and kind of do a pattern interrupt for people. It was like, how can we get people to stop scrolling on negative stuff? So I decided to go to a coffee shop, actually a donut shop that is around the corner from my office. And I said, hey, I'm going to leave $100 here. I'm going to shoot a really short video that I'm going to post on social media. I'm going to tell anybody, if they see this video, if they want to get a donut and coffee on me, all they'll have to do is come by here, order something, and let them know to put it on my tab. As long as they say, put it on Dr. Christine's tab, that's like the password. If they say it, run my card until the money runs out. And that was something that I wanted to do in an effort to support our local small business community and just try to spread joy to people's day. Again, at the time, people were scared and anxious. Some people were getting furloughed. Some people were just getting let go altogether. And so I wanted to try to do something positive in the community. And I told myself that I was going to do this every Friday until the pandemic ended, because again, at the time it was, let's close down for 2 weeks so we can flatten this curve. And then 2 weeks turned into a month, turned into 3 months. And then here we are over a year later. And so I've just been really consistent with that. And I've talked to a lot of people about this because I've been so consistent about this. Because we were forced to try to find innovative ways to grow, people were like, well, did you get new patients right away? And I tell people that that was never the intention.
Right.
It was never about doing this so that I can get new patients. I mean, it would have been a nice byproduct. And it's definitely something that happens now, but that's because I've been consistent with this.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people who were like, I did it for a month, but I didn't get any new patients. And I tell people, I had to be really consistent with this in order to get exposure. And um, again, the purpose was never to get new patients. It was really just to create awareness.
Yeah.
At no point in any of my videos, if listeners want to look at my social media, you'll see all of the tabs that I open up on Fridays. I never mention my business. I never even mention that I'm a chiropractor. I mean, I tell people to put it on Dr. Christine's tab, but there's no mention of my business. It's really just about trying to be benevolent and try to show the community that I'm really giving and I'm really generous and I care a lot about the community. That's really the motivation behind doing it. And again, I've talked to other people who are like, I tried it for a little bit, but it didn't get me any new patients. And marketing really isn't designed to get you new clients. Marketing is there to create awareness because people need to be aware of you so that when they feel that they have a need that you can help them with, then they'll call you.
Yeah, it's just like that patient we were talking about earlier who after 4 adjustments is like, hey, you know what, this isn't really working for me, right? It's like, again, the parallels between how we approach our clinical work and some of the other aspects of practice are so fascinating. But yeah, and just on the topic of consistency, I think it's how many weeks now, 56 or 8 that you've done that in a row?
I think I'm on 56. I think this Friday is going to be 57.
So what I love about that is you made a commitment, right, to do it. You had no idea, was it going to be 3 weeks? Is it going to be 3 years? But you've just stuck with the commitment. It would have been easy after 6 months to say, okay, this isn't changing anytime soon. We've done that. It's great. But I love that you just continue each week. And I follow you on social, so I see it every week and I always smile. Like, she's still doing it. That's awesome. And it's gotten you some recognition within the community, which again, is not about trying to drive people through your front door, but I call that putting points on the scoreboard for chiropractic, right? You're elevating the image of a community-oriented healthcare professional that has done their part, to give back, which is, I think, one of the strengths of chiropractors. If we can just do it in a way that, connects with people in the way that they like to be connected with. So, in a coffee and donut's a perfect way to do that.
I've found that in talking to some people, they're like, I did it for 3 or 4 months and I didn't really get anything out of it. I tell people consistency is super key. I think that's really what has gotten me the results that I've gotten. Now I can't walk around town without somebody saying, hey, Dr. Christine, thanks for what you're doing. And I'm like, who was that? Who are you? These are people who just see me on social media. I've been really consistent about doing this. And then it wasn't until month 5 that I got approached by our local news. They wanted to do an interview with me and run a story on what I'd been doing. And that one TV interview ended up getting blasted everywhere. It was a local NBC affiliate that had interviewed me, and then other NBC affiliates from around the country ended up sharing that same story. And then that has turned into interviews with some talk shows from iHeartRadio, or interviews I got interviewed by a couple Asian media outlets, just because they saw what I was doing. And I've been getting messages from people in so many different parts of the world because they've seen this article or they've seen this news story that ran, or some of the things that have come out of that. And I think about, again, consistency is key. If I had stopped at month 3 or 4, none
Yeah.
of this would have happened. And I think that when it comes to marketing, creating awareness, like I'm in the heart of Seattle. Seattle's, I think, the second most populous area on the West Coast behind San Francisco. And there's just so many businesses out there that are trying to get a message out to the masses. And I think that by doing this, this is just one way that I've been able to cut through that noise and still be in the forefront of people's minds. And now the community sees me as being super generous, super giving. And whenever they are at a point where they're like, oh, I need a chiropractor, it's a no-brainer. They're going to call me. My associate and I, we will do consultations with people, and we always ask, how did you first hear about us? And over the last probably since the holidays, we've been hearing from people, oh, I see the $100 tabs that you're opening up around town, or I saw you on the news, I saw you on a podcast, or I've heard from some neighbors that what you're doing is super awesome. So I thought I'd reach out to you because I need a chiropractor. And so I think, again, consistency is key. Had I quit early last year, I don't think that the things that I have been able to reap as reward from all of that hard work, I don't think it would have been noticed. And it's just been a lot of fun, really.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just fun to be the type of person that helps people, right? I mean, that's the most rewarding part of the work that we get to do. And there's other ways that you can do that, outside of the four walls of your little office, in your little environment. And so being out in the real world with real people and being able to do that in a different way has got to be equally rewarding. And just like you said, you never know when the outcome is going to happen, right? You could be 1 week away from something breaking free and having an increase in your level of return on an investment like that, but you just never know. And everyone's timeline might be a little bit different. Everyone's community is going to certainly be different. Colorado Springs compared to Seattle is not going to, fit the same way. But the principles that you're talking about, I think, are really important to underscore, which is the consistency, the mindset, the idea of why you're doing it, the expectation, which is there was none. The expectation was I'm here to give, and then enough time lapses, that folks look at you as a trusted provider within the community first, rather than the chiropractor that's trying to, reel me in for, some sort of bait and switch type deal. So it's innovative, it's different, it's exciting. I think it's culturally relevant, considering the times. It's something that resonates with people when they see that sort of that inspirational type of like interrupt, like you mentioned. It's desperately needed. So
I actually think that while I'm in a very highly populated area, I actually think that this strategy can be used in other areas, in small towns. I actually think in small towns it may have a greater impact because it stands out even more, because I mean, who's opening up $100 tabs for people? Like nobody. So if you're doing that in a small town, like, people are going to talk about you, and that's essentially what you want, because that's exposure, that's awareness. People are going to be like, oh yeah, Dr. John, he's the guy who's opened up tabs around town. You can go get free food, get free lunch, free coffee on him.
Just have them check every Friday, wherever you're going to be, they'll be there. Just your little crew that migrates each week.
I actually have had some patients, or not some patients, some people in the community comment on my post. They're like, now sometimes I just go to random places and just say, put on Dr. Christine's tab, just to see if maybe there is one.
Like the Starbucks secret menu type of thing. Yeah. Well done. That's definitely creating impact in one way or another. As we're wrapping up here, I know you're obviously really fired up. Like, your passion is contagious, and anyone's been around you or talked with you has gleaned that. And obviously, like the sign behind you says, you're not afraid of hard work, and you have forefront of your mind that it's
Yep.
important to outwork everyone.
Yep.
How do you maintain, I guess, what you would call, for lack of a better word, work-life balance? What are the things that you do to kind of sometimes disconnect a little bit, so that you can maintain a level of passion and energy?
Mhm.
Practices that you've developed over time to do that.
Yeah, one thing that one of my mentors has taught me in the past is that balance is overrated.
Mm,
It's hard as a chiropractor and a service provider who also has to wear a business hat at the same time. So being able, I think the sign of a true successful person is being able to hold on to two concepts that may actually be different from each other and being able
yeah.
to balance them. Balance is kind of overrated because there are going to be times in your business where you're going to have to go all in on your business, and again there might be some sacrifices that you have to make in your personal life,
Yep.
but then at the same time there needs to be scheduled times for you to rest and recharge. So you may have to take some time out of your business so that you can actually um, re-energize, take those vacations. I talked to so many service professionals who were like, I need help because I haven't had a vacation in 5 years. And it's like, well, how good are you eh, helping other people when you haven't taken care of yourself?
Mm,
So you have to find the things that energize you and the things that keep you going. I think again, having a really clear vision on what it is that you want is really important, and just surrounding yourself with the right people, having a mindset that's focused on abundance and gratitude and all the positive things that are in your life, I think is really important. I have a really rock solid morning routine, so that every morning, regardless of how many hours or how few hours of sleep I get, I wake up at the same time every day. I make sure I go through my morning routine so I can get my mind and my body right, to spend 13 hours taking care of patients, or being on calls all day, helping my coaching clients. I really think that it's important that you schedule time
mm.
to work. You schedule time to think. I think that's really important as a chiropractor, as a service professional. I think a lot of times we just get in the habit of just working, just putting our heads down and working, and not really taking time to learn and think. I think that that's really important. And then taking time for self care, whatever that looks like for you. If you asked my husband what self care looks like, to him, it's playing video games for a couple hours so he can just turn his mind off. For me, I like being in quiet places and reading or journaling. Sometimes for me, self-care is just going out to get a manicure and pedicure and just putting my AirPods in and listening to music or listening to a podcast. Um, Sometimes it's just going on a long walk with my dog. I think for everybody it's different, but really finding the things that will help you feel recharged and be able to hit it hard again in business, I think is super important. So
100%. Yeah. And the balanced concept to me is one that's always been a little bit, it's a moving target, right? And I think maybe
yeah.
if you're lucky over the course of a lifetime, you achieve
Hmm.
some level of balance. But
Yeah.
certainly if you're within the first couple years of your practice, let's say the first 10 years, I mean, that's go time. If you're single, you don't have a family, there's no reason to not just hammer it.
Yeah.
If you do have a mission and a vision that is to do something significant and to do something extraordinary.
Mhm.
So again, it all comes back to, having that clarity of your vision and creating a purpose around that, and then systems that help you to deliver that, and then a process for reevaluating that, and all these types of things we've been talking about. So I really
Right.
appreciate you being generous with your time this morning. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave with our audience before we wrap up for this particular episode?
Yeah, one of the things that we had talked about was the $100 tabs and the benevolence campaign. Because I talked to so many people about that, what I've done is put together a process guide for anybody who's interested in learning more information about that. I'd be more than happy to share that with any of the viewers or listeners. All you'll have to do is send me an email, maybe in the subject line, put benevolence campaign, And if you send me an email, I'll reply back with the process guide so that if it's something that you want to incorporate in your business, just all the step-by-step things that I do, so that you can take that into your community. You just have to send me an email. It's just Dr. Zapata at emeraldcityspinal.com.
Awesome. We'll have all those links in the show notes and things like that for easy reference, depending on when folks hear this. But really appreciate you taking the time to put that together as a resource for our Blair family. And for anyone who's listening that would love to get in touch with Dr. Zapata about coaching, how do they get in touch with you regarding that?
Yeah, to set up a call, just go to drchristinezapata.com.
Excellent. Okay, great. And are there certain folks that you really jive well with? Like, who would be the folks that would be most benefited by making that call?
I love working with really anyone who is looking to set a firm foundation for success by building solid systems. I am real big on systems and processes, as I had mentioned earlier. I love working with people who may be in the same situation that I found myself in. Maybe you're an associate doctor who is going to transition to being a clinic director, or maybe now you're a clinic director and you're going to transition into owning your own office. I love working with people at different stages of their career because I feel like in the 14 years that I've been in practice, I've kind of had a stint in each of those different spots. So anybody that's also looking to bring on associates and really want to make sure that it's a win-win for everybody involved, I also love working with those people as well.
Yeah, and outside perspective on just sometimes what you're thinking about is so valuable and can really just eliminate a lot of inefficiency with procedure and things like that. So awesome. Well, we'll also make sure that that link is in the show notes too, and keep listening to the Blair Technique podcast. We've got more episodes coming out. I think next week we're going to have Dr. Tom Forrest, and that might be the next one coming out. So this is great. We appreciate the value that you bring to our community, and we applaud you for the work that you've done in your community and for being a champion for chiropractic and the Blair Technique. So keep up the hard and good work, and we look forward to seeing you in Dallas. And we're going to be, Dr. Zapata is also going to be doing one of our monthly meetups coming up in this spring quarter of 2021. So it's going to be awesome. Look forward to that. And thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.